I'll show you how to scrape any website using n8n, including HTML sites, dynamic JavaScript sites, how to scrape at scale, and even bot-protected social media sites. There's really only 3 methods that you need to know, and I'll walk you through each one step by step. If that sounds good to you, then let's get started. The first one that we're going to cover is a basic HTTP request. This will pull most static sites, but it is rate limited. So the next one that we're going to cover is Zenrows. If you're going to be scraping at scale, as in high volume, 1,000 plus per day, 500 plus per day, you're going to want to use Zenrows for that, and I'll walk you through how that works. And you'll be able to pull most websites with Zenrows. Now, if you're looking to scrape a protected site or a social media site, something like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, you're going to want to use Apify for that, and we'll cover that last. For the basic HTTP request module, it's simply called HTTP request. We're using the GET method, and we're just calling the URL. Very simple. There's no authentication. There's no extra parameters or anything like that. I'll go ahead and hit test step, and we can see that we've got our data that is pulled up. This is the actual website that it's pulled, and the HTML that has responded from the server that it came from. I'll copy this to clipboard, and then I'm going to come over here to my character counter. And I just want to show you, this is 59,000 characters. Any large website might be up to 500,000 characters, so pretty large. The next thing that we're going to want to do, instead of passing it directly into our AI module, where we're going to summarize the data, extract links, and things like that, we're going to want to pass it through Markdown, which is going to get rid of a lot of that HTML, CSS styling, and things like that, and just leave the plain text. So you can find the Markdown module just by searching Markdown. And there's only 2 options here, Markdown to HTML or HTML to Markdown. We, of course, want HTML to Markdown, and then you can just drag and drop your data into that HTML section, and it will populate for you. Destination key, we can keep it as data and go ahead and hit test step. Now that's processed pretty quickly. I'm going to copy this just to show you the difference in the character count here. This brought it down to about 17,700 characters, so about 1/4 of what it was before. Pretty big difference, especially if we're trying to save tokens with our AI module. Now, the next module that I've selected is OpenAI, and you'd want to do OpenAI and then message a model. I've connected my OpenAI account here, so you will need some credentials for this node, and I went ahead and selected GPT 4.1 Nano. That is the best option at this point for a large amount of text and doing summaries and things like that. It is about on the same intelligence level as the old 4.0 mini, but it can accept a lot more tokens, up to 1 million tokens, whereas the 4.0 mini model could only accept 128,000 tokens. So a much larger data source, and you won't run into any issues scraping websites using this model, which is good. I like to give it a system prompt, which is just, you are a scraping assistant, period. That's all you do. And then within the prompt, I'm just telling it, take the provided website and Markdown and output relevant data. Use absolute links instead of just relative links. We want absolute links, which include the full HTTPS, yada, yada, yada. We're going to have it output the following. This is a JSON structure, and I want 2 things. I want the links, which is just an array of absolute links. And then I want the website summary, and I'll have it give me a summary of the website. I'm passing in the website here. Again, you can just drag and drop that in, which is one of the really nice things about n8n. And then I want to pass in the URL as well, because I did ask it for absolute links. Some of those are going to be relative links. A relative link would be something like /demo. This part is relative. Adding in the full thing makes it absolute. And if we're using it later on, we want the absolute link, not the relative one. Okay, let's go ahead and test step here. The other thing that I did that I'll point out is I selected output content as JSON. Anytime that we're telling it to output JSON, we want to use this. And then I like to specifically say what it's going to output. Otherwise, it might call links like absolute links or website summary. It might call that just summary. And then we'll have a hard time calling it later on. It looks like this worked. It pulled a bunch of different links for us, which is fantastic. It put those in an array. And then it went ahead and did a website summary for me, which, yes, that does look correct. Good job, AI. That is a simple HTTP request. Super easy to set up, super easy to use. Again, you don't need any authentication or extra third-party services or anything like that, unless you're using like an AI node. Now that works really well up until, like I said, like 500 a day. I wouldn't do any more than that. If you do, you'll start getting blocked. It won't be able to pull the resource. It will start giving you errors. And that's when you want to switch to a third-party service like Zenrows. So let's move our workflow start down here to Zenrows. And before I go through that, I'll talk you through what Zenrows is. Essentially, it uses proxies to go out and scrape the websites. It also adds in JavaScript rendering and premium proxies, like residential proxies that you can use. It's a lot more successful, and it'll rotate the proxies so that it looks like you're pulling the data from different places. If all of the requests come from one place, from your n8n, then it tends to get flagged as spam and you start getting blocked. If you do it through Zenrows, you can bypass that and you can scrape tens of thousands of websites per day pretty easily, which is typically what I do with cold email. Now, they do have Amazon, Walmart scraping, and some real estate data scraping. I just like to use the universal API scraper, which is pretty easy to set up. I'll show you that in a minute. To get that, you'd want to click on settings. Now, they do expose their API keys, so I'm not going to click on it, but I'll show you where to put that. You would just click on settings. It'll show you your API key. And the other thing that I'll show you is billing. So their developer plan is $70 per month. Their developer plan, $69 a month. And with that, you get 250,000 basic results. So it's a lot of scraping. And if you wanted to do protected, which I'll show you that in Apify. Apify is better for protected. But if you're going to do scraping at scale, I would highly recommend Zenrows because they have such a high limit compared to a lot of others. They would charge a lot more money for this kind of thing. So that's plenty. I've never gone over that, but if you're doing a lot of volume, you might. Okay, how to use Zenrows. So I would use the same HTTP module request, but we're going to add in a little extra functionality. So it's still going to be a GET request. Our URL this time is we're going to call the Zenrows API. So it's going to be HTTPS api.zenrows.com v1. And we do need a generic credential. It's going to be a header authorization. You've got a few different options here. Be sure to select header authorization. And then to create your credential, you can hit create new credential. I will show you what mine looks like. You're going to want to put the name of the credential in here. I just named mine Zenrows, so I remember what it is. And then under name, we're going to put the key for this, which is x-api-key. And then you would just paste in your API key here. Once that's set up, you can test it. And the next thing that I would do is I would send the query parameters. So there's one, the main one that we're going to want to use is the URL. If you are doing JavaScript rendering or premium proxy, you would use these ones, JS render or premium proxy. I'm actually going to delete these for now because we don't need them. And in the URL, I'm going to pull the same URL that we did before, which is my website inbox effect. And that's really all you need. Now, if you're pulling a lot, which sometimes I do, if I'm pulling 1,000, 2,000 websites at a time, I will batch them. And how I do that is I'll set a number of items to batch. So it'll send 5 requests at a time. And then it'll add in an interval between batches. So it'll send 5. And in this case, it's waiting 10,000 milliseconds. That's actually a lot. That's 10 seconds. 1,000 milliseconds would be 1 second. That's how I like to set up my Zenrows HTTP request. I'll go ahead and hit test step, and we're going to get the same HTML that we got before. And this time we're just pulling it from Zenrows instead of directly through the n8n HTTP request module. Okay, from here, again, we're going to use the markdown, and it should give us the exact same thing. And from here, we can, again, summarize it. I've put in the exact same information here, and we should get the same result when we pass it through 4.1 nano. And we did. It's basically the exact same thing. Fantastic. Okay, so we've now scraped with an HTTP request and a Zenrows. Now, if you're scraping websites for leads, anybody with a basic website, this is going to work just fine. Those are really the only two that you need. The next one that we're going to talk about is Apify. And Apify is more of a scraping marketplace. They've got some scrapers that they've created themselves, and then they allow other people to create scrapers for custom websites. And I will show you that right now, and we'll walk through how to do it. So Apify, it's a full stack platform for web scraping, and they have things like TikTok, Google Maps, Instagram, a website content, Amazon scraper, build your own. You can even build your own thing that scrapes whatever you want. Apify is pretty fantastic. Within the Apify backend, it'll look like this. To find a actor is what they're called. You want to go to the Apify store, and then you can search for anything that you want. In this case, I'm going to be scraping a LinkedIn profile. It's one of these. I think it's the LinkedIn Companies and Profiles bulk scraper is the one that I typically use. And as you can see, there's a lot of different options. People can create their own, and so you can choose the one that works best for you. They show you how many users there are and then what the current rating is for that particular scraper. And of course, the most popular ones show up at the top. Other things that you can do, Instagram, Apollo is a popular one. What else? Twitter, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. So people have built these out and you can use them. And then some of them are actually created by Apify, as you can see right here. And you can scrape posts from Facebook using Apify's own actor. Some of these are paid. Apify's tend to be usually included, maintained by Apify. And then some of them will charge you a monthly fee like this one. Some of them charge per usage. Just look up here and you'll see how much. A lot of them have a free trial, like this one includes a 7-day free trial. Just hit start and you'll get 7 days for free. They make it really easy to do that. Okay, so how to use the Apify actor. The first thing that you're going to want to do is grab your API key, which you can find from the settings. I'll toggle that back out. Settings, API and integrations. And then you want to come in here and find your API key. You can copy it if you already have one. If not, go ahead and hit create a new token, give it a description and hit create. Come back into Apify. We're going to use the same HTTP node that we used before, keeping it super simple. This time we're going to use a post request because we're going to send some data about what we want. And it's not just going to be a query parameter or a header parameter. You decide you need to set your URL. And in this case, it's the api.apify.com v2. We're going to select the actor. In this case, the actor that I want is this one, and I'll show you where to find that. We're going to run synchronously and get dataset items. There's a couple different options for this. You can run asynchronously, where you send the request, and then you extract the data later. So if I was going to request 1,000 LinkedIn profiles at once, and then I come back and I can pull that data set once the run is complete and I can get them all at once. This way, running synchronously means that I'm going to wait for a response, and getting the data set items means that it's going to return the information that came with it. Now, where to find that actor ID? So it's going to be actors / and then that string right there is going to be your actual actor. That's going to be the easiest way to find it. And as you can see, it's the same one that's right there. We need a generic credential type. It's going to be a header authorization. And this time we're going to do Apify, similar to Zenrows. But what we're going to do this time, go ahead and name it Apify or whatever you want to name it. Under the name, this time we're going to put authorization. That is the key that they're looking for. And then when you put in your value, just make sure to put in bearer. That's bearer like that with a space and then your actual API key. So bearer space, paste in your API key, and that's the value that should go right there. Go ahead and close that out. Okay, so we've got our URL, we've got our header authorization, and the next thing that we want to send is a couple of headers. We want to send a content type of application JSON, and we want to accept also application JSON. Finally, we're going to send a body, and this is going to be in JSON format. The way that you want to get this is you want to actually start in Apify, and you want to create a run from the actor. So let's find our actor, and we're going to use get profiles. I can get profiles or I can get companies. We're going to get a profile, and we're going to get my profile. So you just put in your your URL, and then you just hit start, and it will run the actor for you. It'll give you a log and show you what's going on. And it says new profile discovered, Dan Wilson. Oh, fantastic. Nice job. Now we look at the input to see what was actually input, and it'll show you the JSON. And you can just come in here, copy that, and put that right in there. And now when your URL changes, you can just make that a variable and pull it from a previous node or whatever you need to do. And if I pull it from here, it's going to do the exact same thing. Now, I also set batching for this, 10 every 5 seconds, and I've had no issues doing that at scale. Okay, what it's returned, this is the JSON format. Let's look at the schema. So it showed us the URL that it pulled. It gives me my first name, my last name, my headline, all of my education, everything about me, my experience, yada, 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 license and certifications. Okay, excellent stuff. So I've got a lot of stuff pulled from my LinkedIn. I don't need to put it into Markdown or change any of it. I can throw it all right into my AI module. I'm going to also set this to a 4.1 nano. I'm going to tell it you are a scraping assistant, and I'm going to give it a user prompt that looks something like this. Take the provided LinkedIn profile information and extract the most interesting or unique things in their profile. I'm going to give it an output format, which is JSON, and then I'm going to tell it, I'm going to give it the LinkedIn profile. Now I've got it configured as JSON stringify. What that's going to do is make sure that we don't run into any snags in case there's any unallowed characters or anything like that within what was provided from Apify. And it will pull everything and it'll just put it in a nice JSON format just like that. Let's go ahead and hit test step and let's see what 4.1 comes up with. Okay, there we go. We have our summary from LinkedIn, and this is the JSON for it. As you can see, did a pretty good job. And now you know how to scrape using Apify. Again, you just find the actor from the URL and you find your input for the JSON, and then you can use Apify to scrape anything. Again, I'll recap. HTTP request is for static site. It could get rate limited. For high volume, you want to use Zenrows. And then for anything that's protected, you want to use Apify. Here's a table summary. And it walks through all the different things that you could potentially scrape. So we've got HTTP requests here, Zenrows here. There's a Zenrows premium, but if it's in premium, you just want to use Apify essentially. So for static HTML choices, a basic HTTP request is going to be your best choice. And at scale, it's going to be Zenrows. It's got some examples of pagination and things like this. Moving into Cloudflare protected sites, Amazon product pages, LinkedIn profiles, Facebook events, things like that. it's saying that you basically want to use Apify for anything that's going to be protected, which is essentially what we see down here in the recommendations as well. All right. Hopefully you guys found that helpful. You now know how you can scrape any website that you want to, whether it's basic HTML, JavaScript, scraping at scale, or even bot protected social media sites. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for things that you'd like to see me make videos on in the future, please leave them down below in the comments. I will look at and read and respond to all of my comments. Hope to catch you in the next one, and see you next time. Bye.